Welcome back to another episode of the Jordan Checker podcast where I'm joined by Oscar Ledlin. Oscar is the founder and managing director of Melbourne-based commercial property development firm Ledlin. Oscar currently owns 26 commercial properties worth around $35 to $40 million. He is also one of the co-founders of GeeUp, a low-calorie pre-mixed alcoholic drink where he finds himself in business with some of his best mates such as Adrian Portelli, Troy Williams, better known as Troy Candy. In today's episode, we're going to talk about why the Australian dream of buying your first home as fast as possible is not the best advice, why you should invest in commercial real estate over residential, how to ensure going into business with your mates goes smoothly, stress management in high stress environments, the problem with the working from home model, raising your standards, and much, much more. But if you haven't already, please do make sure to subscribe on either Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or YouTube, and enjoy the episode. Thanks for joining me, Oscar, and thanks for having me in your home. So I wanted to start, first of all, speaking of your home, like you've mentioned that you don't actually own anything in your name, no cars, no house, you're renting this. As someone that's obviously in a solid financial position, why is that something that you do still?
Yeah, I think at this point in my life, owning a home, my money is better invested elsewhere, along with my focus as well. And I've talked a lot about this, so we can go as far into it as you want. But the real crux of it is, I think if you set out to buy a home as an investment property, you either end up with a home that you don't love or a shitty investment. The balance between the two is very difficult to find, in my opinion. I think if you're looking for a home, Jordan, there's a checklist of 100 things that you want in a home. You're very active, so you want to be near walking tracks or gyms or parks. You've got a missus, so you need space for that, or you've got a dog, or there's all these lifestyle factors because you're going to be living in this place that you need to consider. And then the same again, if you speak to any property expert or a financial advisor, anyone who has any experience in financial investment, if you're looking for an investment, there's a different 100-point checklist for you to consider. What capital do you have available? What's your income like? Are you self-employed or are you on wages? Because that's going to affect how you can borrow. There's 1,000 different things where it's depreciation advantages because you want the tax advantages because of your income, or there's 1,000 different things that would make a property a good investment for you and 1,000 different things that would make it a great home to live in. The chances of finding one property that satisfies both of those checklists is extremely unlikely and near on impossible. So I think like this whole, work hard in school, get a great education, get a job, get a mortgage. Like you and me, we finish year 12 and we're on a race to see who can be the first one to commit to a 30-year mortgage. I think it's very outdated. And what I see in not just my circle, but the greater circle of people who are ambitious in entrepreneurship, I think that rushing to buy a home can be a real downfall, and it can be a real strain on their ambition and their business endeavors.
Yeah, I was going to say a couple of points to attack there, like in terms of, you mentioned business endeavors at the end there, as someone that's early days trying to build like a product and things like this to sell, it's like you need the capital to put that forward generally. And if you've got a mortgage and then all of that, all of your investment is kind of going towards that, then you're maybe half-assing and your plan being your business aspirations a little bit too much as well. But I wanted to then also ask, you mentioned, not to rush into it. Is it something that you say you would never like buy your own home in your current position? Or is it kind of like, let's just see where life takes us a little bit first and then reassess, you're not rushing?
Yeah, so there's two things on that. One is my wife, Jessie, and I, we've lived in 7 houses in 8 years together. So we first, we were sleeping at her mum's house and I'd stay over at hers, and then the same with my family. And then we moved out and then we started to make a little bit more money. So we moved again, and then we got Willow, our cavoodle. So we wanted space, a bit more of a backyard for Willow, and then we made more money, and we had the freedom to do that because we weren't buying and selling houses. It's very inefficient to buy and sell houses. Every time you buy, you're paying stamp duty and other government charges on the way in, solicitors and that sort of thing. Every time you sell, you're paying an agent, you're paying a solicitor again. If you've made money, you're lucky enough to make money, you're paying capital gains tax. So there are all those considerations that are dictating how you live your life. Whereas when you have the flexibility of just a lease arrangement, you at the end of your lease tenure, you pack up, call the removalist, and off you go. So the flexibility for Jesse and I to be able to, I think financial advancement has probably been the most obvious one for us as our finances have increased. We've been able to move to, nicer suburbs in nicer areas, and like now where we are here, it's a beautiful, beautiful place to live. And then the other side of that is buying a home for an investment. I just don't see like the financial returns being worth it for where I am in my career. Without a doubt, one day I'll buy a beautiful family home, and I'd love to park a beekeeper cash in a house, but I won't be looking at the returns because in my view the returns will be shit compared to some of the other options available in the wider market.
Changing your mindset around that, like it's not, even though it might go up in value, that's relative to the pricing of the market anyway. So if you were to buy another home, they've gone up in value as well. You're not seeing your home that you buy as an investment. It's seeing it as a place to build a family and all those sort of things.
It's a luxury.
Take that mindset behind it instead.
Yeah, absolutely. And, there'll be people in the comments will be like, oh, your landlord can kick you out. What about security and all this sort of thing? And they're 100% all justified. But what I'm saying is that home ownership is a luxury, and I'm making the decision at the moment to prioritize my financial gain over the next, whether it's 12 months, 3 years, 10 years, above and beyond, the benefits that do come with owning a home.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that, and it's refreshing to hear, like you say, that you do want to once upon a time buy a home as well and have that, because I think a lot of people out there, maybe the guru sort of mindset is like, you see it all in the numbers and you're like, never buy a home, it's a bad investment, da-da-da-da. It's like, hang on a second. Never said I was buying the home for an investment either. Like, there's so many benefits, and not just like a P&L sheet of life. Like in terms of dollars, it's like you may not necessarily want to be bouncing around with your kids, and you can't get a house in the suburb where their school is or something like that. It's like maybe you do want to just settle down now that you're 35 and your business is just around the corner. And it's like, well, it makes sense now to start to think about that as well.
Absolutely.
It's just the early days.
And the flip side of that is, I think that a lot of us really sacrifice on the lifestyle attributes of our home because we're so ingrained in like, we've got to buy. Oh, we can only afford here. I'm going to drive an hour and a half to work and an hour and a half home to live in the middle of fucking nowhere so I can tell my friends that I own my home. Yeah. Rather than pay $600 a week, I'll pay $800 in interest on the mortgage plus the outgoings, and be putting myself in a detrimental financial position because I just really want to own my home and it's the Australian dream. So I think there's definitely two sides to it.
Is there a bit of a difference if someone's not in going down like the business route of things? Do you think that maybe speeds up the time where they may go, it's a good idea? Because some people you can tell them to your heart's content, you should invest your money, you should start to maybe, even if you just want to work a 9 to 5 your life, maybe look at doing some shares or something where you don't really have to do, not too much effort or something, and they just really don't want to do anything else. It's like, well, at least it's maybe better than in the bank if they're very much just doing nothing.
I think it's definitely a consideration, but it doesn't change the logic behind if you move into a fantastic apartment and you've bought that place and then you get married, you have a baby, you get a dog, you change employment to a great employment opportunity, and you're bound by the ownership of that home and what that means in terms of selling. If the market, like if you bought 18 months ago and you just got an incredible employment opportunity to move now and you're selling your home, you're going backwards. I don't care what anyone says. The market in the last 18 months has declined, and plus the stamp duty you paid going in, the sales fees you pay going out, you're going backwards. You're not doing that. If you've put your life savings into a home, it's and you've on your balance sheet or on paper you're 100 grand backwards, you're foregoing that employment opportunity because you don't want to have to sell your house. So I think if you're working a 9 to 5, then property investment can be the most attractive investment opportunity for you. I still don't think that has to mean owning your own home. That can mean renting close to where you want to work, where you want to play, where your family is, and then buying the house that you can afford that returns as a great investment somewhere else. It doesn't have to be the same property.
So separate investment from home.
It's the crux of it.
Yeah. And what about in terms of, so you mentioned you also don't, like cars, nothing like that is under your name as well. Is that all structured through businesses and trusts?
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, that's, I think the biggest part of that is asset protection, which is probably something higher priority for entrepreneurs that are taking I'm not taking any crazy risks, but if you're in business, you're taking some level of risk. From a personal point of view, I don't think that there's too many risks of, things that I'll do personally that would put my assets at risk. But from a business point of view, it helps to really keep my assets separated.
Is that similar in not just for cars? Like if you go down different ventures, it's making sure that things are under different branches in terms of like ABNs or company names and whatever, so that if one was to get a bit shaky, it's not really going to affect the other as well. Is that similar to the car asset structure?
Exactly right. So the asset structure is, I don't have more than 2 properties in the one trust. Every different business is run under a completely different structure. My development entity projects are all run under different entities. And it's not just about asset protection. It can be about finance as well. So if I have 2 fantastic commercial properties in an entity and they're generating their own income, then I can go to the bank and I don't have to be like, look at my tax return, look at my business tax return. I can be like, look at this company's tax return. It owns these 2 assets. It's bringing in $70,000 a year in rent, and it can borrow funds in its own. So there's benefits to that too.
Yeah. So someone that is looking, so you mentioned, separating home from investment, and now someone goes, I'm going to buy a residential property for an investment. Why would you suggest, you're obviously very much in the more commercial side of real estate, and maybe not everyone even knows what a commercial property even is. One, what's a commercial property look like? And 2, why do you go down that route rather than the residential investment?
Yeah. So, commercial property is any premises of commerce. So essentially any building that, or even land where somebody is operating a business. So it can be, a childcare center, service station, supermarket, you can have warehousing, factories. There's thousands of different commercial properties. Office is obviously a big one. They've all performed differently and continue to perform differently. But the benefits generally of commercial property is what the structure and entitlements of a commercial lease brings you. And that essentially is the rents based on the value of the property are typically and historically have been higher. So $1 million residential property will provide, only just a little bit more than half the rent of $1 million commercial property. The tenant in a residential property has all the benefits, and the landlord has to pay all the outgoing expenses. Whereas in a commercial property, the tenant pays all the outgoing expenses. So, the body corporate, the council rates is all paid by the tenant. So essentially in a commercial property, the rent that you get, you keep nearly 100% of, and where in a residential, you get rent, then you have to pay all these outgoing expenses.
So what are there any downsides, I guess, to the commercial real estate? Like I think from previous podcasts you've been on, like talking about that it is a higher, you have to have a bigger deposit in comparison to a residential property.
Yeah, so years ago, commercial lending was a lot tougher than what it is now. For whatever reason, the banks have shifted to start to favour commercial property more than they used to. So the deposits in commercial used to be larger than what they were in residential. Now that gap is significantly closing. So we have plenty of clients that are buying commercial properties on 20% deposits. I think in terms of sum of money, there's incredible commercial opportunities now for sub 500k, so it's becoming more and more competitive.
Things like obviously Melbourne as an example, massive office sort of structure within the CBD. Like you go everywhere, there's office buildings everywhere. How has that changed? Like COVID lockdowns, like everyone's working from home. For me, coming from Adelaide, I noticed that there's it's fucking busy. Like Adelaide, you're like, there's not much going on here. You come here, it's like hectic, but it may not be as busy as it obviously has been in the past. How does that impact people looking at commercial office spaces? Do they, in some cases now, have to look at maybe switching them and turning them into something else, or that's kind of come back to normality as well?
Definitely hasn't come back to normality, and COVID fucked up a lot of things. If you owned a cafe or a gym in the middle of COVID, you're in a bad. Yeah, exactly right. Same with an office. Office really struggled throughout COVID, and now coming off the back of that, work from home, it has decreased in popularity, but it is still a thing. It wasn't really a thing before COVID, so the need for office has reduced. Interestingly, A-grade office is performing very well compared to B and C grade office, and I think that's employers really trying to entice their employees to come back to work. You know, if you're running your business and you're leasing a shitty office and I'm working for you and you're like, come back to the office, I'm like, fuck that, I don't want to come back into that shit.
My home's nicer. Like,
yeah, exactly right. You know, but when you've leased an A-grade office and it has like great amenity and, you know, kombucha on tap and all this fancy stuff, I'll be like enticed to come back in. So we've seen segmentation in the performance of A and B grade office, but as a whole, office is definitely still struggling, CBD office particularly.
Yep.
But alongside that, CBD apartments are also performing incredibly poorly because people have left the CBD because it's not a centralized work district like it used to be, because of Zoom, because of work from home and all these sort of things. So I think CBDs, you know, as a whole, CBD real estate also perform very poorly.
Is that why the potential, like I mentioned to you before, you know, on Thursday morning I had a podcast with someone else and it was in like one of those shared sort of like a WeWorky sort of
co-working space.
Yeah, co-working space. But, you know, these guys have leased like, say, like a desk and there's like 10 chairs each side and there may be like 10 businesses on the same floor, but they're all really small, like agency sort of things. Is that where those office spaces just, it's not a matter of maybe you won't be able to find the tenancy as well. It's just you have to adapt what the structure looks like a little bit as well.
Absolutely. Co-working space and hot desking has, you know, performed incredibly off the back of COVID, because where the business that you used to own where you'd want 200 square meters for 15 staff to work from. Now the same 15 staff, they're only coming in 2 or 3 days a week. You can have 5 or 6 hot desks and have a roster of, you know, you go in Wednesday, I go in Thursday, and we share the space as well. So we're making more efficient use of space, and the structure of tenancies and leases have had to react to that too.
Diversion from the property point of view, what is your take on like the working from home versus working in an office from a level of enjoyment, productivity? I've got my own views, so I'll let you spit yours first.
Yeah, to be honest, it hasn't worked for me and it hasn't worked for my team. I think it can be very industry dependent, and I think there are some benefits to working from home, but I think like the lack of mentorship that's available when you work from home, the lack of colleague interaction, collaboration on projects, I think the detriments outweigh the benefits. And there, of course, are, you know, some incredible benefits, like not having to travel and costs for the business not having to, you know, house as many employees within the workspace. But as a whole, I never really got behind it. I never really seen the benefit in my team. You know, we collaborate a lot, and I encourage collaboration, you know, above productivity almost, because, you know, we get great outcomes and the business benefits from that. I think for some monotonous tasks or more individual tasks, working from home can be productive in the short term. But I think that over the next sort of 12 months to 3 years, I think we'll see a pretty aggressive transition from work from home. I think it's survived as long as it has because unemployment is so low. It's so hard to, as a business owner, to recruit team members at the moment. And employers are incredibly scared to lose their team. So I think that as employers, sometimes we've had to consider what's in the best interest of the business, but put the best interest of the employee above that temporarily because we're trying to, you know, maintain, you know, incredible talent. That's not something that I've had to do. My team, you know, I offered them work from home from the start, and they really didn't. They all tried it during lockdown for. Some of them lasted a week, some of them lasted 2, and then they were all asking for permits to come back to work because they didn't like the work from home situation. So but I want to know your thoughts on it.
I mean, I work obviously, like, you know, not having, I don't have a team, I don't have a business really off the ground running now. So a lot of like, I'll sit at home, I'll edit the videos, I'll write all my PT programs and start working on the app and all these sort of things as well. And I'm like, I hate it. I hate working from home. Like, yeah, I've got 2 little dogs running around or whatever, but it's the little thing of like, oh, I should probably go do the dishes, and you get distracted by home tasks, which I guess it depends on. They can be good. Someone's like, oh, this is great. Like, I get to 5 o'clock and somehow I've managed to do all my chores as well. And it's like, as a business owner, that's probably not a great thing. You seeing people do that, but just the mental health side of things, I think as well, whether you like people or not, and a lot of people will be like, oh, I'm an introvert. Like, I love working from home. I'm like, we're still social beings. Yeah. You need to be around people. That's where your creativity really blossoms as well, I think. And so I think, I don't like it. Yeah. But once again, I can see where maybe a combination of from home, in office, in industries can work to allow people to maybe, you know, at least pick their kids up from school once a day if that's something that's important to them, or, you know, not everyone wants to throw their kid on a bus to sport practice. They might want to get there and see it. So if they can start earlier and then get to sports training or games or something like that, then maybe you could, see a flexible sort of approach as well.
Yeah. And I think that there's iterations of work from home that we haven't seen evolve yet, so some of the detriments that I mentioned, they might be able to be negated with changes in management structure and changes in technology and, measurements of productivity and stuff that will allow it to be more beneficial to the business and alongside the benefits to the employee longer term. Yeah. So we'll see how that evolves.
Yeah. I think it's still a struggle as well, like to break out of that. Maybe not as a business owner, you got to accept that you're always going to be in a business mindset as per se, and you're always going to be thinking. But as an employer, they probably want to go home and just shut off. And it's really hard to shut off when your office is right there. So you walk, like you're kind of always wired working. So you don't really like, should I stop working now? And you're constantly in this mindset. And if someone, if you're on 80K a year, you're like, I don't really want to be thinking about the job like 24/7. I want to like stop thinking, spend time with my family, take the dogs for a walk and not be thinking about these things. But I'm just this is work and this is home all in one. And it's really hard to disconnect then as well.
And I think definitely employees can struggle with that and suffer from that as well, particularly if they've, had great career success over the last, whatever it's 12 months, 10 years, they've been developing in their career, performing really well, they're ambitious, and then you remove the structure of work starts now, work stops now, and you put them in their home where they can, quickly just open an email or they can quickly just duck into the office to check a couple of things. And because they're an ambitious employee, but now they lack that employment structure surrounding them, they can succumb to the trap of never switching off. And I don't think that's beneficial either.
No, they've had a massive routine breaker. We know that creativity really blossoms when you're on the walk.
Yeah.
Or when you're just doing the dishes, like, oh, fuck, that's a great idea.
Yeah.
But if you're constantly, you're trying to think, it's hard to think straight. It's really hard. But back in terms of like the investing side of things with property as well. So a large majority of accountants or people will tell you, oh, but the property's negatively geared. I know you have a pretty strong opinion on this from previous podcasts you've been on as well. And for me, this was something that I said, like I PT clients, they'll be like, oh, Jordan, just, you need to save up and then, invest and get a little unit or something like that, negatively geared, and you claim that on tax, but it's still negative.
I mean, I really have never understood how this negative gearing is proposed as a positive argument. It's like saying you're running a business, it's losing money, fantastic, that's a tax deduction.
On no income.
Exactly right. You've set up this investment property that essentially operates as a business model. There's rent coming in, there's expenses going out. You've set up this business model, it's losing money per week, per month, and we're celebrating that, saying like, the more money I lose here, I'll save some tax over there. I'll lose 10 grand over here and I'll save $2,500 in tax. Like, I really don't understand that. And it's not actually a saving if you really digest the numbers and the structures of negative gearing. What you save on tax in the financial year that you're claiming the negative gearing, you pay that tax back when you sell the property and realize the capital gain. I don't know how many of your listeners are accounting, so we won't go too far into it, but every time you claim a negative gearing, you're resetting the cost value of that property lower and lower. So then when you sell it, the capital gain is bigger in proportion to the claims that you've benefited from along the way. So it's a temporary tax benefit for losing money along the way. It's
and then if you started to think in the mindset of like, oh, well, then I just won't sell it. It's like, well, then you're never getting a benefit from it.
Then
like,
you're just holding a business a business asset that's going backwards.
Yeah. So then what, like, the difference then in the commercial, is it a pretty consistent, like from the numbers you've looked into and seen, let's talk Australia-wide. That's where obviously you're looking at, specifically Melbourne as well. What's the kind of difference in income coming off the back of like commercial properties in comparison to the residential?
Yeah, so the yields are high, so the rents are higher than they are in residential. But what really determines the performance of the investment asset is that there are no expenses or almost no expenses paid by the landlord of a commercial asset. So, if you've got a big house that you're leasing and you're getting $1,000 a week rent, and then the rates come along and it's couple of $1,000s a quarter for the rates, and then it's in a strata setup. It's a townhouse. It's got body corporate fees. All that comes out of the rent. Whereas under a commercial lease, those outgoings are paid by the tenant. So the net income of a commercial property yields quite high. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess you look at in a commercial property, you could just literally have a concrete floor and walls, maybe a pisser in the back corner or something like that, and you're like, there you go, done. Versus like a residential property, like you got to have all these curtains, you got to have all the lights work,
the maintenance, the compliance of inspections and stuff like that that you have to have in a residential property now. And the Residential Tenancy Act changed, I think it was in 2021, and like that was a real kick in the guts for residential investors, and a lot of people started jumping ship there because the compliance and upkeep of residential properties, how the bonds are handled and stuff, all changed for the worse from a landlord's point of view and from an investment point of view. Whereas commercial, I recently leased one of my commercial properties, and we have fixed rental increases of 4% built into the lease. So I know that my tenant isn't leaving for 4 years. At a minimum, they have options to stay on longer, but for 4 years, I know they'll be in there paying rent. I know next year the rent will increase 4%. The year after it will increase 4%. When they moved in, they said, I would like to put some partitions in the office. We want to set up a security system and put some tech within the office space. And I was like, fantastic. They've been quoted $50K. They're going ahead. They're adding, arguably $50,000 of value to my asset at their cost. That doesn't happen in a residential setting.
It starts to become like a bit of a team effort to kind of improve the property, because they can see a longer term investment in this. Whereas like if a home, you see like, it's only 12 months, we can stick it out and then the next one will make sure that has that problem solved or something. Yeah. Whereas in a commercial, they're like, this is our business.
Exactly right.
I want to make this as good as possible. So they're going to put money forward. You're going to be like, I don't care if you make some changes, because you're going to be here for potentially up to like 10 years plus. Like if you owned a Bunnings warehouse site, or if you owned like a childcare center, they're probably not going anywhere anytime soon.
Yeah.
So you can be like, do what you want almost, like within reason.
15-year leases, those sort of things. And like even in the smaller setting where I primarily invest, your businesses are traditionally staying in there for 6 or 7 years. And there's a make good clause in the lease as well. So if they get to the end of the lease and they're like, we're moving out, if I wanted to, I can be like, take that camera down, take that out. Those boardroom petitions have got to go. But usually at the end of it, everything that's value add to the business, you just have the conversation with the tenant to say, you can pay somebody $5,000 to rewire this, patch fill that, and take it with you, or you can leave it. And that's the likely outcome.
Yeah, it's a much nicer option by the sounds of it as well. Like in just terms of stress of tenants and things like that. So with in terms of the structuring then growth within your own business, what are you doing to ensure you can, probably the benefit of the opportunity, the fact of they're making money helps you to grow. I guess that's another a stickler that people would come into with residential. If you're negatively geared, you're losing money. You can only have so many properties because you're paying out of your pocket as well.
Your income in whether it's your primary business or your job, has to increase for the banks to continue to lend you more money. So you can lose money each month, lose more and more money on more properties that are negatively geared. Whereas under commercial, if you have a positively geared asset, you're at the end of the month, you've got $3,500 rent coming in, and you've only got $2,700 of expenses coming out. That positively geared income allows you to borrow and buy another positively geared commercial property that has a surplus income at the end of the month or the year, and then you can use that to increase your affordability and buy another one. And the banks look at that serviceability and be like, great, continue building a portfolio. The more positively geared properties you buy, the more we'll be able to lend you.
So why would you then, with the stuff you're doing with like the flexis and things like that as well, would you prefer to lease them or build things and sell them and take like the capital gains straight off the back of that?
There's two elements to that for me, because I run a property development business. As an investor, property ownership for me has been incredible, and my business will segue further and further into that. And I hope one day to build business parks and not sell anything, to retain the entire asset. And this sort of realization came, the asset class that I primarily focus on being industrial, so warehousing, commercial storage. In the 3 years from sort of 2019 to 2022 had incredible growth. It's had, fantastic growth over the last 10 years. It's outperformed residential property in every investment aspect over the last 10 years. But the 3 years from 2019 to 2022, it just absolutely pumped. And I had a look, and I don't have a massive property portfolio, but over that 3 years, my property portfolio compared to the business where I was building properties, taking on, incredible amounts of construction finance, working, 60, 70 hours a week, running a team, running a construction company, turning over 7 figures a month. My property portfolio increased in value about the same amount of the money that I made working, running a decent sized business. And I was like, fuck, the wealth generation is in owning property long term.
So that's where you started to go a little bit deeper in that when you started to see those numbers.
Yeah, and I'm fairly aggressively exploring like that transition, and whether it's transitioning my core business model into that or having a different business where I focus on, building more building more of an asset base. But it was a real eye opener.
If someone's looking, they've got some money saved up and they're looking for an investment property, what's sort of a minimum that they're looking at probably for a decent property that will give them some solid return and income off the back of it?
So our entry level commercial properties are our flexi units, and our smaller flexi units, it varies slightly from project to project and location specific and sizes and layouts and stuff. But from, we recently sold properties from $99,000, and we had lenders that went up to an 80% LVR on a $99,000 property. So you're talking $25K by the time you pay your 20% deposit, a couple of grand in stamps, a conveyancer to handle the settlement. And, it's like extremely attractive for first-time commercial property purchases and first-time property purchases.
Yeah, and you're feeling like those with those flexis, like you're just seeing like they're just packing in pretty quickly. Like people are renting them out pretty quickly. Like there's no delay on people leasing them, like because people are looking for those smaller, not the big high-rise office buildings. Maybe they got a small team. They just want a shared boardroom or a car wash in the bottom as well.
Exactly right. Their flexi unit is their 4 walls, roller door. It's nice. It's polished concrete floors, painted walls. And then they have the co-working office amenity, the communal boardroom, the car wash, the lounge area and stuff like that. So it's also attractive for the domestic storage market as well. So, you've got a couch that you want to store, or you want to get some stuff out of the garage, and that market is extremely strong at the moment. So, yeah, we're seeing incredible uptake of our recent Springvale Flexi project. Prior to completion of the buildings, we had pre-leased, I think, 23 of 30 units. So, that was before the people could even walk through, touch, feel, and move into the space, which is pretty rare in this space.
Are you looking at expanding those out? Are they all in Victoria at the moment, or
is
that something you look at other states in the future as well?
Yeah, we will, but there's no need for us in the immediate future. There's plenty of opportunity in Victoria for us, and going interstate brings with it, complexities, geographic complexities. We also have an internal construction company, so we build our own projects. Moving interstate would mean either outsourcing that, which would bring about different risks and headaches and that sort of stuff, or setting up a commercial construction business interstate, which of course would be a whole nother feat in itself. For the moment, we'll focus primarily on Victoria, and there's a couple of opportunities that have just popped up. We've had a couple of people reach out to us and say like, hey, I own land here, would you explore a joint venture? Or so we're considering options like that interstate, but primarily focus on Victoria.
Yeah. On a more personal level, you're obviously a very driven person. Looking back, is that something that was developed, you think, through boxing and through sport in that, and you've kind of just taken that mindset across the board with you? I know personally this is something that I see a common thing in people that have done sport not even, you don't have to have been a pro, but you've gone all in on sport. Like the mindset, you go into the business and you're just a bit of a dog. Like it makes it so much easier. Yeah,
I mean, I hold a high place in my heart for my history of boxing, just not for the boxing attributes, but for the confidence that developed in me out of that and the lessons that I learned. Combat sports, whether it's boxing, kickboxing, or any other combat sports, they teach you a lot about yourself, particularly if you you're approaching it with some level of seriousness and discipline with your training and diet, and dropping 6 kilos in 24 hours to make weight, and like some of the stuff that comes with that. I remember when I first transitioned from fighting, finished up professional boxing, went full time into growing my business, and I was 21, 22 years old, walking into boardrooms with 50-year-old investors that had incredible balance sheets or big businesses or whatever it was. And before I'd walk into the meeting, I'd be G'ing myself up out the front, being like, don't worry, if anything happens, you can just knock him out, smack him and walk out and you'll be fine. And that was never, I'm not an aggressive person. That was never something that would ever happen.
But it was a mental mindset.
That mindset of like, you're capable.
Yeah. How do you deal with that? Like, touch on that topic of like, there's 50-year-old guys and you're coming as a 21-year-old. How the hell do you try and, like, you're trying to come in with some form of, like, they'll be like, well, you don't know what you're talking about in comparison to us. Like, we've been in the game for 35 years. Like, how do you deal with that?
I think you accept it for what it is more than anything, because most of the objections or concerns they would have are true. Mm-hmm. You're 22 years old. You've got fuck all experience. You don't know what you're doing. I'm 22 years old. I've got fuck all experience and I have no idea what... You're right.
They're not lying.
Exactly. So, to burr up and be like, I've done this, I've done that, it doesn't bring any value. I think to accept that and then have a look at the other side of it, which is I'm 22 years old. I have an extreme amount of energy compared to a 50-year-old business owner. I will take calculated risks to a different level of a 50-year-old business owner. I don't have the distractions of a nagging wife at home. I don't have kids yet. I don't have these predispositions that have been ingrained in me for 20 years. I'm up to speed with how the younger consumer is moving. I think like acknowledging the shortfalls of being young in business and then just playing to your strengths is something that, as a young person, it's easy to get caught up and be like, oh, it's discrimination or it's bullshit or whatever. It's not bullshit.
You just don't know what you're talking about.
Exactly right. You just got to play to your strengths. Yeah.
And how do you navigate then maybe bouncing off those guys and trying to absorb as much as possible? Or are you going out there like, studying, reading, doing all these things to try and get up to scratch? Because I imagine you still need to know the fundamentals of how things are working. That's probably not something you can really slip by too much. Like,
I mean, you can't get away with not understanding the space that you're in or what you're doing. When I say I have no fucking idea what I was doing, I knew the fundamentals of what I was doing, but in comparison to people that have been in the industry for 30 years, I think if you surround yourself with successful people and you act enthusiastically, they will help you, to an incredible degree. They will go out of their way to help somebody who's young, ambitious, and enthusiastic. And I think if you understand that, you can play to that. And that's something that I learned very early on, was if you show up, you act enthusiastic, and you listen, people will give you so much time and they will really help you along the way.
Yeah, I think there's a common theme of just even the few people I've spoken to on the podcast is just like in terms of the hiring process, even like if people are looking to hire and you maybe don't have the skills, but you've got this mindset, you've got this ability to go through the challenges of life and just kind of work through them rather than let them affect you as well. They're like, well, this is a person that we can teach, we can train, we can mold, rather than someone that walks in and pretends they already know it all. They're not stupid.
Yeah.
They can see through that. Like, they know what knowing it means.
Yeah.
You're not it. Like,
I haven't considered it like that, but I've definitely, now that you mention it, like I definitely can reflect on times where I've sat interviewing people and you have someone come through and they're like, I can do this, I can do that, I've done this. And you're like, oh, that's pretty impressive. But then when you find yourself talking more in an interview and you can see that the person's really absorbing what you're saying, that's like, that really resonates with me now. It's like, shit, I can help build this person into the operator or the team member that I want.
Yeah, which there'll definitely be a balance between that as well, because if someone has no skill set, then you're just building them into another version of yourself almost as well.
Yeah.
Like it's, you want them to have something that you don't have.
Yeah.
But also a mindset that can be great, because that also might just mean like you want them to go and learn on their own. Yeah. It's not saying you have to do all that teaching for them as well. And that's probably comes back to your boxing career as well. Like it's, combat sports, not done them myself, but spoken with many people that have at a decent level, and it's like it's a very humbling experience. You know, you can walk out there, you can be feeling like Conor McGregor on top of the world, get smacked in the face, you're on the floor. It's like, well, back to training.
Exactly,
you know,
right.
So you take that into business as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think combat sports are incredibly humbling and a lot to take away from it.
So is sports something then, you're going to be a father soon as well of a young boy. Is that something you're going to be massively encouraging, knowing what it's done for you in terms of your mindset, your work ethic as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm not going to be one of those militant fathers that I've seen plenty of that, like if you don't have an Australian title by the time you're 18, you can walk home. But it's something that I'll
say that now. We'll say.
Yeah, exactly right. I just was like, fuck, did I say it on camera?
Yeah. I'll put that clip up when you do it.
But no, I think definitely I'll be a big advocate for sports and even combat sports. I mean, I hope Jessie's not within earshot because she'd probably be grueling at the thought of our baby boy going on to fighting and stuff like that. But it's definitely something to at least an intermediate level I'll be encouraging purely for confidence.
Yeah, I think sport in general, you just nail so many of those avenues. Like it's something like I remember training like over 10 times a week as a kid during school, different sports, doing all these things. And now once again, like it elevates your work tolerance, your stress tolerance as 100%. Well. Like if you can handle that, now the 10, 12, 14 hour days or something is so much easier because you went already through life training before school, training after school. Before you know it, that was a 14, 15 hour day.
Yeah.
It's just normal.
The physical commitment, like you've mentioned, the mental commitment of committing to something and then, you don't make the heat or the final or whatever it is, you get injured and staying mentally committed to recovering from that or going again or backing it back up. I think it's massive.
Yeah, all skills that we'll work through there as well. So then your approach to work-life balance, as per se, how's that changing knowing, little man on the way?
Yeah.
What was your I think work-life balance before as well?
I mean, like younger days, it was horrible. I sacrifice is a pretty strong word, but my focus was on business. The first really 4 or 5 years of my career, I had an unhealthy focus on my business. But more recently, I have looked for, I don't think balance is the right word. I think balance, implies that you have two.
It's 50-50 sort of thing.
It's 50-50 or they're even opposing. I think what defines work and what defines life. Like we're sitting here on my couch at home, we're enjoying a double espresso iced or whatever that crazy coffee is.
No judgment.
Yeah, exactly right. And we've just given one of my businesses a plug. Is this work or is this life? Like I'm not sure. I think
it's choosing.
Yeah, exactly right. I think it's a matter of perspective, but in the general perception, my flexibility within my business endeavors, I think, has to change. I'm out the door before 6 a.m. of a morning. I'm not home until after 7:30 p.m. I think a newborn baby's going to change that up a little bit. And now that I've just talked shit about working from home for the last half an hour, I think I'm going to have to swallow my pride and consider bringing some of that into the space, or maybe bring home to work and bring the baby to work. But a big focus for me for the last 12 months in anticipation of, change in structure and welcoming a baby into my world has been just getting time back. So I've really invested in, lifestyle attributes and services that will help me get my time back, both in my personal life and in my business life. So in my business, it's been, more delegation, investing in a bigger team or even better contractors to allow me to have better leverage of my inputs. So to make decisions and then have different team members or contractors execute on that, help me get some time back like that. And then in my personal life, it's been like just, the housekeeper, the chef, the garden maintainer, the pool cleaner, and not doing those. I don't think low value tasks is the right description, but just not doing the things that I don't want to do and allowing me to get more time back for the things that I do want to do, which is about to be helping raise a baby.
Yeah, well, I think the task that someone else can do as well, isn't it? It's not an acquired skill set on your behalf only, whereas in your business you'd have plenty of those as well. And it'll be really interesting to see then off the back of like maybe these things that you're doing now weren't things you would have done unless you had a baby coming along, in terms of more delegation, more elimination, more changes in strategies as well, and see you might off the back of it have even greater growth, then you thought, oh, this was going to be a period of my life where I'm not going to see as much growth, and then bang, because I did all this delegating, it's
Man,
like,
100%. Like
you've
you've rocked me with saying that, because it's something that like has really become evident in the last 3 months, because I'm preparing so much to pull back, and I've seen what I've done in order to do that is having, incredible results within my businesses and also within my personal life as well. It's like, I can't be getting, 5.5 hours sleep and getting up and training 6 days a week and then adding a couple of runs in. It's like pulling back a little bit has benefited my health and fitness as well. And then in the business space, pulling back has incredible results. And you're right. If I didn't have this, incredible reason to explore that, I might have just kept sweeping the floors and, doing the dishes and the things that I don't necessarily enjoy and aren't high value tasks.
Yeah. So you mentioned the early days that you had to make sacrifices, as per se, and I have an interesting, I don't know, I like to reframe my mindset around sacrifices to make it feel like it's not so bad. And I've said this before, but it's kind of like the real sacrifice for me would be not making the normal sacrifice. What the 9-to-5 person may see as a sacrifice in working extra hours or sacrificing income or something like that. I'm like, it would actually be a sacrifice on the life that I want in the future anyway. So it's not really a sacrifice. Like it's for me to want to get my business to where I want it to get to me to want to grow this podcast, and we've got some bangers.
We do. We have that will be the housekeeper at the front door, I think. So
that's all right.
Jesse's gonna handle that, and then
that's what podcasts are great for.
We can let people hear the housekeeper.
It's a nice tune, really.
All right, we might have some chaotic puppies in the background, but I can just imagine Jesse up there now freaking out, being like, "Shut up!" Yeah.
Those collars aren't working.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah. Exactly right.
But yeah, like reframing the mindset around sacrifices, I guess, there, so that like you're seeing the sacrifice is not that you're giving up more time. It's not that you're spending money. Like the sacrifice would be on the polar opposite of if you didn't do those things and then you're sitting there at 40, 50, 60 going, what if?
100%. Yeah. And like I said, I don't think sacrifice is the right word. I think it's priority. And it's like in that moment is the priority to go out and party with your friends and chase girls and it can be for some, and that's perfectly fine. Or is the priority committing to your business, committing to your health and fitness goals, whatever it might be. And it's just where you're at in your life and balancing those priorities.
Yeah, I think it's interesting as well. Like as someone, I've never really had a huge interest. I don't drink, I don't party, none of that sort of stuff. But there's also no judgment on someone that's 21 and wants to do that as well. I'm like, but as long as that doesn't happen and stretch until you're 35.
Yeah.
It's like eventually you got to grow up. Like it's life needs to start happening. Especially if you're considering wanting a kid or something like that in the future. Probably shouldn't be partying when the kid's on the way. Let's try and refocus and reassess like what your life priorities. The word there is really a powerful, I think, as well.
Yeah, and I mean the sacrifices that somebody make might not be for their business. It might be the baby comes along and the sacrifices become you can't be out till 3 a.m. with the boys and that sort of thing. But I think again, it just becomes something else is a priority.
Yeah, it's a shift in your life as well. So now, you've gone into business with friends. And so for people that are not familiar, that your alcohol company, GeeUp, for names that people would be more familiar with as well, like Troy Candy, Adrian, Portelli. A lot of people say don't go into business with your friends.
Yeah.
How did you navigate that?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, it was almost the worst thing, but became the best thing that we ever did. And I think it has to be with the right people, and I was told the same thing from a young age, was like quickest way to get rid of a friend is to go into business with them. And I think that can definitely be the truth. And if you go into business with a friend who isn't an incredible person, I think it is a surefire way to end that friendship. But if you go into business with friends that are like family, then I think you have an incredible team of trusted partners, and the outcome of that can be incredible. And that's sort of what we're starting to see in our business. So early days, it was very challenging. We had some hard conversations that you just wouldn't expect to have with, the boys. And it was a challenging period, and we It took a lot of effort and it took a lot of focus to navigate. Everybody had to put egos aside or do their best to put egos aside. And there was times where, and I'll put my hand up to be the first one to say, like, it wasn't as smooth as what it could have been, but we worked through it, and the business relationship that we have off the back of it, and more importantly, the way our friendships developed off the back of that has been something that I wouldn't change for the world. So, and now, we're 5 best mates. We're in business together. It's becoming, financially rewarding, but aside from that, it's just, it's really personally rewarding to be in business with your mates.
So knowing that it could have gone the other way, like, how did you know, what do you think are some key things that if someone's like, all right, me and my friend want to go into business, is it aligning on values so that your trajectory for the things that you want to achieve are matched, not just on the skill set side of things as well, do you reckon?
I think it's about treating your business partners and your friends like business partners, but with the respect of them being your friends. And it's a little bit hard to explain, but I think when you start deviating from what you would do in a commercial sense because somebody is your friend, you create issues and you create begrudgement. And, if your business partner, if we go into business tomorrow and you're not performing to what we agreed under our partnership agreement, I would say, Jordan, you said you were going to do X, Y, Z. You're not doing it. Like, we need to change something. If we were best mates, you're not performing. I might turn a blind eye to a little bit. I might make a cheeky remark, but not have a direct conversation. And then I start becoming begrudging, or you start wondering why I'm making all these remarks, and it can create issues. I think if you treat your business partner as a business partner, then you'll avoid a lot of issues that can come later. But then the flip side of that is they are your best mates. You are going for dinner on the weekend. You do know their wife. The kids do call you uncle. You have that relationship, and you can't be ignorant to the fact of that either. You can't be too direct and straight down the line. You can't speak to them like a subordinate, even if they're beneath you within the commercial hierarchy of the business structure that you agreed to. So I think it's a balance of things, but I think, it's definitely an art.
So you have that ability to disconnect from working, now their business partner, to now friend.
100%.
That's the main factor you should really be focusing, or a big factor you should be focusing on.
A massive factor is you meet at the boardroom table, your business partners now, and then when you go out for dinner after, things change. And for whatever reason, the boys all wanted me to be CEO. So when we sit down at the table, I have conversations with the boys now. I'm like, guys, we're not spending this much on this party. We're not staying at the fucking Four Seasons. If we're staying at the Four Seasons, we're each personally tipping in for accommodation. That's not a business expense for this now. Those conversations I need to take control of because that's my role within the business. When we go out after, that completely changes. They're not looking up to me, and that's we're just the boys then. I think you need to be able to navigate through both of those situations while having respect for the overarching situation at the same time. So
I was going to say that's the video. What was it? Troy posted, I think, of like the Wolf of Wall Street clip of your face on something like that, and everyone's like wanting to spend money, and you're there like, no,
exactly.
Like,
and that's my responsibility. And the boys will they'll bitch and moan, God bless them, in the moment, and then at the end of the day, that's like what we each agreed is my role within the business, and I'll do that to the best of my ability.
So did you have to still put things into place, some structures and stuff, to rest assured that if someone went haywire, you can be like, hey, you don't just trust that, we're friends and we're all good to go. Like, there needs to be some documents signed and some things here to make sure we're smooth sailing.
100%. I think that was like probably one of the challenging conversations early on was like, we're best mates going into business. Let's just split things equally and see what happens. There's no conversation about who's going to do what. How many hours do you have available to put into the business? How much money do you have? It was just sort of like, let's just work it out as we go. And I was like, boys, I'm not comfortable doing that. And then we started progressing down that path, and issues started to emerge, and we almost had a reset of like, all right, listen, we've tried this. It didn't work like that. And those are some of the testing times that I've sort of referred to is when we went down that path of like, we're boys, let's just see what happens. And somebody's working 30 hours a week in the business and somebody's just had a baby and they haven't thought about the business for 2 months. That's when issues start to arise. And then it's like, all right, guys, who's got what availability, who has what strengths, what value do we put on that availability and strengths compared to something else. And we treat it as a business. Once we set it up like that, it was smooth sailing from there.
And that's, once again, the disconnect from like, this is business, this is not friends when we're in this current moment as well. Is like, we need to note, like, let's set this up as if everyone is a random, I guess, at the end of the day, in terms of the business structure. And that's only going to help you grow as well. And make sure that's...
The structure in place is extremely commercial. There's shareholders agreement, there's expectations on each other, there's conflict resolution protocols. But we put that agreement together almost 2.5 years ago, and it hasn't come out of the top drawer because at the end of the day, we're boys and we're also all very experienced in business. So we haven't had to rely on that documentation. But it's there as just, I guess, a benchmark of expectations and to keep everybody, I guess, accountable to what we're doing here, which is building, an 8-figure a year business.
Is that your challenge? Like, obviously, so you've, electrolytes in kind of like let's try not to plug too many other brands with it as well, but like a cruisery sort of drink as well. Did you see, like, was that an opportunity that you saw in the market opened up there, or was, someone already wanted to pursue it themselves and they just wanted, everyone else to come along for the ride?
So Troy had the idea for, I guess, innovation in marketing for that product. He's drank the brightly colored, sweetly flavored drinks from, I'd say when he's 18, for any authorities listening. So from a young age, he was drinking those sort of drinks, whether it's Cruisers or Smirnoff or whatever it is, at parties. And there used to be a real stigma about that. And it was like, guys would be like, drink Carlton Draft. I'd be like, it's fucking tastes like shit. It makes you bloated, like all these sort of things. And, why are you drinking girls' drinks? So Troy really wanted to break down that stigma, and he thought there was an opportunity to rebrand some products that are already available in the market with a more masculine marketing identity. And then he got a fair way into the process, and he just had a lot on, and it became a bit much for him. And the boys and I all knew that he was in this venture. We were tasting samples with him and cheering him on. And he got to a point where he was like, guys, I'm throwing in the towel. It's too much. I got this on, I got that on. And we just said, nah, you can't do that. You come this far, we'll help you. And he said, no, I don't want any handouts. If you want to get involved, let's set it up as a business partnership. Cool. And that was the start of it. It was an agreement that was done at about 2 a.m. in a spa at one of my birthdays. And we all sort of got up the next day and we're like, there's a bit of shit talk going on last night, boys. Are we doing this? And that was the evolution. Cool. Became a full-on partnership. And then the electrolytes was just an innovation in the product. We just saw, we're like, could we do this? And everybody in the industry, if it was possible, people would have done it. Marketing, how are you going to do this? How are you going to do that? And we worked through that, and now it's one of our key point of differences.
I guess it's just a common theme in business, isn't it? There's always someone, or not everything's going to be exactly done that way, but that's how new businesses can innovate and become something else as well. It can be this small little tweak, or you could have the same product, and like how you guys have just said, like how you approach it into terms of like the more male market as well. Obviously, I think it's on like the Instagram bio as well, like and females as well, or something like chicks as well. Like it's like, so you obviously it's not just a male drink as well.
But it's not a male's drink. It's just not a girl's drink.
Yeah.
So definitely the market there for both has started to serve us very well.
Yeah, I think it's really cool as well. Just like I know, touching on Troy, like it's to see someone like that, and you're working with someone like him. But on his more personal level, for anyone out there, it's kind of like, he can come across like this, reckless, driving the cars, doing all these sort of things. And it's like, but to be so switched on as well, and to like go down those business routes, I think it's staying true to yourself as well. Like he's just unapologetically himself, much like I'm sure you all are really, and how that just helps you elevate and actually do so much better. And, when you come together, like you said, different skill sets, different things that you bring to the table as well. It's like you needed someone like him for an alcohol brand that sells very well. It's the influencer sort of marketing done.
I mean, he's incredible at marketing, but something I admire about him most is his ability to show up in any situation as his authentic self.
Yeah.
He will show up to a party and he'll leave that party and he'll show up to a business meeting exactly the same.
Yeah.
He does not give a fuck what anybody thinks about him, not in an arrogant way, just he will be himself, and what will be what will be. And he's been doing that for a long time. And you can see, like, if you meet him, you'll just straight away, it's just, he radiates authenticity.
Yeah.
There's no, I want to give you a first impression. There's no, I think you like this, so I'm going to try and act like that. Or it's just, he just shows up as himself. And I think, that's why he's so lovable.
Well, like we said, with walking in with a 50-year-old businessman, they'll fish it out eventually.
Yeah.
And then it's even worse. Maybe it takes 5 years.
Yeah.
And then eventually people realize what you're actually like. And it's like, well, now there's going to be a bigger detriment. It's like, so just stay true to yourself.
Yeah.
That's not to say you're perfect either. That's not to say you can't improve. Like someone like himself, I'm sure he's developed massively, like we all have over time as well. It's not to say like, if you're a right old prick, it's not like, just soak it up. That's who I am. It's like, well, okay, to some extent, like let's shift it. But like don't let your personality slip away just because you're walking into a boardroom or something like that as well.
Absolutely.
It's powerful. So how do you approach raising your standards in your life? It's something you've obviously done in many aspects and you're about to do it again as a father. How do you approach that?
I think it's just, I guess, a continual iteration and drive for personal progression.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it's something that it's probably in us all. I think as a species, human evolution has been something from, depending on what you believe in, has gone back thousands of years, and we're a species that has just continually evolved and driven for progression. I think we all have that in us. It's just about identifying it and how much we appreciate that. And for me, I really value progression. So in all areas of my life, I look to improve on today better than I did yesterday, and tomorrow better than I'll do today. And that shows up in my finances, is a strong focus on that for me. My health is a big strong focus. My relationships, both with my friends and with Jesse. And I think the method or the vehicle of development changes. Sometimes it's personal reflection. Sometimes it's advice from external consultants or coaches or books. But I think it's just the real focus of, I want to be better. I want to be better.
How in depth do you go with things like a goal setting on business and personal? Like it's both. You should be setting goals on both. Yeah,
massively. I think goal setting is something that we don't do enough of, and we don't do it in detail like we should, and we don't reflect on it enough. But I set very structured and detailed goals. I haven't always been like that. I've been goal setting for a long time, but the degree of goal setting, the degree of reflection has increased in recent years, and it continues to evolve, and it becomes more refined. And it's something that I'm very focused on at the moment. And even, becoming a dad was a goal, and now there's going to be goals, within fatherhood of like how I want to show up as a father, how I want to show up as a partner to my wife in raising a child. And there will be a lot of goals that sort of fall beneath that as I get a better understanding of what I want to be as a father, because I'm that 22-year-old in a boardroom again being like, I have no fucking idea what I'm doing. So
is that something you chase out, like the 22-year-old in the boardroom sort of feeling, like that imposter syndrome? It's new to a situation. You actually seek those things, like not necessarily on a daily basis, but that's one of your things you're always doing. Yeah.
It's incredibly uncomfortable, but I love it. And I don't think, I think if you're not prepared to be the worst person in the room at something, you'll never evolve. It's like day one has to be, I suck at this sport. I have no idea what I'm doing in this business. I'm nervous about starting this relationship. If you're not prepared to be in those situations, you'll never have high levels of success. And I think if you consider any element of your life where you consider yourself successful, if you go back far enough, there was a point where, you were very uncomfortable in what you were doing, or you were secretive about how you were doing it because you didn't feel, proud or excited or worthy about what you were doing, whether it's finances, whether it's health and fitness, whether it's starting a podcast. If you look back at your first podcast, I wouldn't expect that you were sitting on the couch so comfortably as you were now, or you wouldn't expect, how confidently you'll cut up edits and promote them and push them and hope for more people to see them. I think early days you're like, I'll just push this out, and, for some friends and family, hopefully they support. I think anything that we become great at, you start from day one. I think it's just about embracing that day one. Yeah.
And then that's important as well. Like it's, touching on my own sort of journey as well, like I mentioned previously and before we started, like chopping up fitness clips and doing all those sort of things as well. Like when I first was like, I'm not doing this anymore, that's like, you can feel a little bit like, have have I wasted 2 years of trying that thing? It's like, and then you go into the next thing, and now I'm doing this, and it's like they're straight into helping with that as well. So that's just so powerful.
Yeah.
To stack what you're doing as well.
It's like a supplement stack, or a training program of the cardio that you did last year. If you want to grow in size now, it still has some benefit in how hard you can push in your weight sessions and stuff like that. I think it's like we mentioned with the sport, I was so committed to fighting and then fighting at a professional level, and then I stopped. And for me at the time, maybe I was like, fuck, I just devoted 10 years of my life to this craft, and now I'm not going to do it competitively again. I'm not going to do it professionally again. I'm not going to earn money from it again. I'm not going to get the accolades. What a waste. It ended up being like one of the biggest benefits to what I went on to do. And I think there's that in everything. That every, uncomfortable experience, every time out of your comfort zone, you're taking something into what you're doing next.
Yeah. Then in terms of like stress management, how are you managing, work stress, life stress of knowing you're about to be a dad, all those sort of things? Do you do anything specifically?
Yeah, I think the main stress techniques for me is probably my health and fitness, like maintaining solid, structured training regime, whether it's at the moment it's believe it or not, it's weight focused. I'm trying to build my physique. I'm trying to lift heavy. I'm eating a lot. Previously it's been cardio and I did a marathon last year, so having something to focus on, whether it's the marathon or trying to bench 2 plates for 12 or whatever it is, having that structured goal I think really helps. I think focusing on just general health outcomes are still somewhat underrated. Not having too much caffeine, getting enough sleep, maintaining a nutritional diet. I think that is like super beneficial for stress protocol. So much of stress is managed in your gut, and to not have the right diet I think is something that's a bit underrated. And then the more spectacular or the more shiny stress management techniques are like breath work. I enjoy breath work. Cold therapy, whether it's cold showers or ice baths, something like that, is a focus of mine. A little bit of meditation, but I'm not as into meditation as I have been previously. I find I get the benefits of a 30-minute meditation with like a 4 or 5 minute breath work. So the active breath work performs better for me, but that's probably
are these new additions recently, like that you've started playing around with, or you've been doing it for a long time? Because I know like it's a common theme at the moment, like guys that have made it, let's say, like they've just exited the business, or they're now massively able to pull the foot back on time commitments. They're like, I wake up, I do sauna, I do ice bath, I do this, I do that. And then they're like, yeah, but you weren't doing that at first. And like this whole like, oh, have more balance, take care of yourself a bit more. It's like, yeah, but to get where you were, you didn't do that. So like that's, when did that start to shift that you really focused on this more?
So I'm definitely not in that stage of my life yet where I'm really pulling back. I'd love to get on here and say, I wake up at 4 a.m, I journal for 3 hours, I have a fucking negative 72 degree ice bath every day and stuff. It's not like that for me. It's more, I'm still, running a million miles an hour, growing 4 businesses now, about to have a baby, trying to maintain relationships with, my group of close friends. So it's more of probably a real life stress management situation, not the follow my morning routine, a day in my life vlog type situation. So it's something that's been a focus probably for the last 4 or 5 years. Yeah, maybe even a little bit longer. And it comes in varying waves. Sometimes, I'm more stress management, health focused than I am other times. And then sometimes it's like I'm sleeping 4 hours a night, I'm having way too much caffeine, I'm not meditating. Like it comes in waves. And I think like it's an area I can improve on, but I would hate to put it out there that I am perfect in that space and that, I am doing all the things I'm doing and I'm sleeping, perfectly and stuff. But it's become a focus for me more recently, for sure.
Sleep might go downhill soon anyway, so
I keep getting told that. Yeah, we'll see.
I don't know. I'm just speculating from what other people say as well. But I think that's good, and it shows that there's just different chapters in life in general. There's times to go, there's times to pull back, but especially if you're into business, a business owner yourself, or you're pursuing a high achievement in any form. That could be sport. Like there's going to be times where you might get a sleepless night in comparison to what you had hoped for. One's not going to kill you if it's happening, 3 weeks straight of 3 hours, 4 hours sleep. That's probably not great.
Yeah, and I think it comes back to what we touched on earlier, is its priorities. At some moments in your life, your health may not be priority over your sporting commitments, your relationships, your financial aspirations. And rightly or wrongly, I think you need to accept that and don't beat yourself up for the decisions that you made, because I have put my financial aspirations above my health more than I probably should have at points in my life. But I mean, I have no regrets for that.
But also your standard, talk about the average person, is probably your standard for health was still probably greater than like a massive amount of people. That's not to say that you can be like, oh, that's good, I'll leave it there then, because you want to increase your standard all the time.
Yeah.
But it's a part of it
I
as
think
well.
that camera just turned back
It's
off.
fucked itself.
Yeah.
So what, in terms of then, like, if someone's looking at getting into the investing, the real estate side of things, do you have any books or any, maybe YouTube, people on YouTube or anything like that someone can just get their foot in the door to go a little bit deeper than what we've discussed today as well?
Yeah, I think there's a book called Rethink Property Investing, and I have no affiliation with the author, the book, or the business behind the book. It's a book that I continually recommend, and I've had hundreds of people, reach out to me and say that they've read the book upon my recommendation. So Rethink Property, if you're listening to this, you at least owe me a coffee or something like that. But no, I think that's a fantastic place to start. It's a very easy to digest, a great introduction to commercial property.
Yeah. And then in terms of a generalized sort of thing, what do you think are some key points in terms of what it takes to be a successful business owner?
I think work ethic is probably, for the early days, it's very hard to be successful in business without a strong work ethic. I think there can be varying degrees of what a good work ethic looks like, but I think for the most part, strong work ethic is a great place to start. Self-belief is also, I think a real fundamental. If you look at successful entrepreneurs, successful people in general, be it sport, but in business, they have this underlying self-belief of I'm going to start something and I am going to reach the desired outcome. And then I think that love for continual progression, progression in your business, progression in your health, relationships, and personal development, I think is a key fundamental.
Yeah. It's interesting. I love the concept of like a bit of naivety within there as well. Like it's, if someone sets out, let's take like sport for an example, like I'm going to play in the NBA. That's a pretty bold, naive thing to really think that, like, if you run the numbers on how many people actually make it out of how many people try, the odds are not great.
Yeah. 100%.
But that doesn't mean you shouldn't pursue it. But like, so almost like that naivety is a really powerful tool. And that maybe back to the young 22-year-old sort of thing. Like I've said this, like the more I go through the app development journey, the more I'm like, why the fuck did I do this? Like, but I'm in now. I'm doing it.
100%. And I've had that conversation with a few of my guys before. It's like, if I knew what it was going to take to get my business to where it is now when I first set out, there's no way I would have set out. I wouldn't be like, the thought of doing all the things that I've done now from the outset and knowing that success isn't guaranteed, I wouldn't have set out, So I definitely think that naivety is, it's a real superpower.
Yeah. It's hard. I mean, you can't deliberately probably be like, I'm going to be naive, but I guess that's the element of when you're chasing and you're going into a new avenue or something, like you're always going to have an element of it there with you as well. But when you couple that naivety with the fact of the self-confidence as well, and the walk into the room and be like, but I can do this and I can grow and I will continue to try and do that as well, then that's like the recipe for success in anything, really, isn't it? Absolutely. It's perfect. Well, I know we had a few complications with the camera, but I might wrap things up there. I really appreciate it. Oscar Ledlin, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you for having me, Jordan.
Cheers.
Appreciate being on the show.